Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Nice. So, uh, you're Elizabeth, right?
Yes, I am.
Nice. I'm also trying to call Oscar, Karen, and Angie, but they're not answering. So, I'm just gonna share my screen.
Okay.
All right. Before that, I need to write your names. So, give me guys just 1 second. All right, Elizabeth. So it looks like it's gonna be just me and you. So that's not a problem. Uh,
Okay, I hope so.
yeah. So today's topic is considered for a weekly lesson. In a weekly lesson, we often have a vocabulary focus, and the way we work it is through listening skills. So the idea here on this particular topic is to acquire as much vocabulary as possible, and then we're gonna practice that with a little bit of a listening exercise. All right.
Okay.
So today's topic is called video games, and so we're talking about video games because it's a huge deal, and the way I portray this is through some statistics. So right now, mm, the country that plays most video games is the United States, and they have the following numbers. So for men, it's 54% of men play video games. For women, it's 46. So you see, it's a huge deal. It's one of the newest forms of entertainment that's between the most popular forms. So I like to start with a warm up,
Okay.
and I have two questions for you. One is, why do you think video games are so popular? So let's start with that one.
I consider video games are very popular nowadays because these allow people to live lives that are beyond their boundaries.
Hmm.
So one day you can be. I don't play video games. I'm just guessing. One day you can be a princess in medieval castle, and the other day you can be a warrior fighting in 2200. Let's
Mhm.
say that. So I think that is very popular because that allow people to live different lives, go to different places, and nowadays, thanks to internet connections, and most of all in these lockdown days, allows people to be in touch with other humans. So that maybe is the reason of the popularity of video games.
That's very well expressed. So thank you for that. Be in touch. Now you mentioned something very important to this topic, and it says life beyond our lives, and we call that the scope of interaction. So video games offer us uh, this new form of interaction where this is ourselves, we have the screen, and we can feel that we're there. Uh, that's partially the reason why it's becoming so popular, is because of that scope of interaction. And also, well, in the case of online video games, we can get in touch with some other people. Now, I also have another question for you, and is, are video games part of a culture?
I think if we compare ourselves, if we compare Colombian culture, maybe with Japanese culture, it is not.
Hmm.
But if I compare my adolescence with nowadays childhood, it is.
Hmm.
Because children nowadays are asking more and more to their parents video games because they consider this is a good way to interact with each other. But if we compare ourselves with Japanese culture, we are not even starting a video game culture. So for that reason, I don't know what to answer.
Yeah, well, in the case of Colombia, I agree it's complicated for the reason of comparing us to countries that practice more video games. So yeah, I agree with that with you on that one. Uh, but also in the case of the popular culture, we call that not just culture but pop culture. It's integrated within those terms. So in that sense, yeah, video games are part of pop culture. And pop culture is not necessarily related to one particular country, but also uh, it's globalized, so it belongs to the whole world. Popular culture. All right. Now I'm gonna start with the lesson. So I'm gonna ask you please to mute your microphone. And when I'm over, we're gonna move to the exercise. Thank you. All right. So video games. As I was saying from the beginning of this lesson, the idea is to get, if we don't know that vocabulary, to try to incorporate it because of that popularity. So I'm going to talk about genres and platforms. When it comes to video games, genres and platforms are essential, and we wouldn't have any conversation about video games if it weren't for this. So let's start with genres. We have shooting games, and well, in the case of shooting, is any type of game where you use projectiles, whether it is guns. There are some video games that you can shoot flowers. There is also one where you can shoot paint, whatever, but it needs to be some form of a projectile. And here, well, you can kill people, and you can also use hit scores. It's not necessarily killing scores, but it's more of a target game, and that is related to shooting games. We also have sports. So this one is easy. It's any type of sport that you can imagine. It's gonna be simulated in the form of video games. Football, basketball, golf. There's now fishing. It might be boring for some, but it's gaining popularity, so it's worth talking about that. Fighting. We also have fighting. So fighting games is not incorporated into the scope of sports because here they have subcategories. One is real, like boxing, UFC, WWE. We also have fantasy, So imagine crazy scenarios, and you get two characters fighting where in other contexts they will never fight. And well, that's the case of cartoons and anything related to fantasy. There's also one called Smash, and that's when you get more than two characters in one big arena. All right, that's the case of fighting. We also have sims. Sims are short for simulations. So we have racing, we have social games. There's one called Second Life, and you can live your own life, but in the virtual world. There's also one that I cannot remember right now. Jobs. There are simulations about jobs, like flight simulator. You can simulate to be a pilot. You can simulate to be a farmer in Farmer Simulator. You can simulate to be a train driver, train simulators, and that is the word of sims. We call those sims due to the pop culture. It's accepted to call those sims. We also have RTS. RTS is real-time strategy games. This is the case of games that you have to spend a lot of time to gather resources like gold. You have to mine, and this one is usually remembered by the factor of having wars. So the bellic aspect of those games is gonna be through the goal of wars, RTS. We also have MOBAs. That's multiplayer battle arenas, and it's just exactly as the first one, RTS, but this one is online, and it's not focused so much on strategy but on battles, like in the form of shooting. So it's a mix between RTS and shooting, and we call that MOBAs. We also have RPG, and that's role-playing video games. Role-playing video games. Right, and that's it for the genres. In reality, we have more than 100 genres, but these are just subcategories of each of these ones that I just presented. So we don't have to worry so much about that. We also have platforms. And the way this work and the way they're called platforms is because they work very similar to scenarios. Imagine I have here a scenario, and I have here my software. So in order to run this, it needs to be sustained in a platform, and that's why we called it. So in the case of video games, we have platforms. Well, we have PC, that is short for personal computer. We have Xbox. We have PlayStation. And this one is gaining a lot of popularity, is mobile, and is playing games with your phone or with your tablet. Now, that's that's the case for just video games. This one is owned by Microsoft. This one is owned by Sony. Uh, in the case of PC, these are very similar, except PCs are used on desktops, and this one you will use them on your living room. And that's it for platforms and genres. Now we can move to the listening exercise that we have for this lesson. So let me tell you something. We have prepared from the organization of this community to implement this exercise. I listened to it and it's really bad. It doesn't have to deal anything with acquiring vocabulary related to games. So I just selected this video. It's much better, and we're gonna do the exercise with that video. I'm gonna copy the link and paste it on the chat. So open it when you can. It's about it's 5 minutes and 35 seconds. And after you watch it, let me know. We're gonna have some questions about it. I also see that Karen joined us. That's great. So Karen, just watch the video, and when you finish, come back and tell me I'm finished, and we can talk about that video in the form of questions. So guys, I'm gonna give you 6 minutes for that. So see you in 6 minutes. All right, Karen is done. Nice. And how about you, Elizabeth? Did you finish? Nice. All right. So let's move back to the whiteboard. Okay, I'm gonna make two questions, number one and number two. So for the first one, Karen, can you please tell me what is the most popular video game genre and why? You have to enable your microphone. Okay.
Um, Actually, I don't remember, but I think is the one that is used MOBAs, multiplayers with the mobile.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, it's shooters, but don't worry about that because MOBAs it's a mix of shooter and strategy games. So, thank you for that. All right. Now, Elizabeth. So there was a joke about Koreans and video games.
Yeah.
What was the joke?
He said there are some levels: basic, intermediate, advanced, or Korean level. That was very funny.
All right. Excellent. Yeah, that was the question. And what do you think the Korean level mean?
People all the time say the same. You think you are good in something until you discover there is a Korean little boy that can do it better than you. Because they spend a lot of time making their hobbies perfect. So maybe it's not just Korea, maybe it's about Asia in general, Japan, China, Korea, these kind of things. They are really involved with their hobbies.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, it's quite funny. I also heard that in the form of there's always this Asian kid that surpasses you, even if it's playing the piano or not just with video games. So very well.
Or cleaning the floors, whatever, they are better than us.
Yeah, everything that's related with actions, I'm sure they spend more time on that. So well done, Elizabeth. Thank you for that. Now we can make a quick summary. All right. Summary. So in the case of video games, we have to, even if we don't play video games, we have to have this kind of vocabulary because that's what makes a proficient user. So a proficient user is one that can talk, let's say, 30 minutes about hearts and the anatomy of the hearts. But he can also talk about golf, video games, and well, these topics are often related to what's going on in our cultures, in the pop culture. This was the case of video games. They're a huge deal because of the amount of people that play them. And we're gonna call that pop culture. Pop culture. In the case of video games, we learned that there's many genres, but we can subdivide them into just a few. That was shooters, simulators, RPGs, MOBAs, and all of that. So, genres. And finally, in order to play those video games, we need platforms. So platforms is just the way the industry provides us with forms of playing those video games. We have PC, we have consoles, and I forgot to mention something, and it was handhelds. and those are portable devices that we can carry with us everywhere. And yeah, that's it for this lesson. Well, I appreciate all of you for your participation that made the lesson so much better. And I wonder if you guys have any question regarding this lesson.
I think it's okay. Thank you so much.
All right, my pleasure. So I hope you guys have a nice day and take care. Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Thank you, teacher. Bye.
Bye bye.